Hello there, it's Kylie from Little Moo Designs. Welcome to video 1 of the Wanderer's Clutch Sew Along. The Wanderer's Clutch is one of the parts of my brand new book called the Escape Travel Set. You will need the book to participate in this sew along. So grab your supplies and let's get started. The Wanderer's Clutch is a grab-and-go clutch designed to hold all that you need while travelling in style. With 3 card slots, a phone pocket on the back and handy zipper pocket in the centre, the Wanderer's Clutch is the perfect everyday purse. Jump to page 9 of your book, The Escape Travel Set, so that we can begin. In this video, we will be looking at making the flap piece of the Wanderer's Clutch. That will include installing piping and also installing a magnetic snap. So the flap piece is this piece here. Something really important that you need to remember is the way that you cut the flap. So if you're using directional fabric like I have in this version, you can see that on the front the lady's the correct way up, and also when I open the clutch she's also the right way up. To do this, you cut one the right way up and one the wrong way up, but when you put them together, it works correctly. If you're not using directional fabric, you don't have to worry about that. You can see here I've cut my 2 flap pieces and I've put my interfacing on. So one piece has the mid or lightweight interfacing and the other one has the fusible fleece. It doesn't really matter which one you fuse to the exterior or the inside piece. It's okay because at the end they come together and they'll be the correct weight anyway. If I was using a really lightweight fabric, maybe something like a Liberty or a cotton lawn, I might add a lightweight to both pieces just to bring it up to the weight of quilter's cotton. Now turn to page 10 in your book and we're going to work on step 2, which is making the flap piece. So you're going to take the exterior flap piece, like so, and I'm going to show you how I insert piping. So you can see here that I've got my piece of pre-made piping and I've got some pins, and all I'm doing is I'm lining up the raw edges of the piping with the raw edge of the flap piece, and I'm just going to pin in place, trying to keep it nice and straight. Like so. You're going to do that all the way around. So your flap piece should now look like this with the piping ready to sew. As per the book, you will notice that there's tips and tricks as you go through, and this is a really important one if you haven't worked with piping before. I recommend that you put a bright coloured thread in the bobbin of your sewing machine, and you'll see why, because what your next step is to stitch as close to the stitch line in the piping as possible all the way around this edge. By putting the bright coloured thread in, it will help when we piece the 2 flat pieces together to get a really perfect finish. I'm going to now go and stitch along the stitch line that's already in the piping all the way around here, just using a usual stitch length. Mine is a 2.5. Okay, so you might use a piping foot or a zipper foot if you need to get nice and close to that piping cord. Can you see my stitch line there? So on the back I just used purple so that you could see it easily, and on the front I just used white. So the idea is that when the flat pieces are together and we turn them out, that there's no parts sticking out. It should be nice and flush with the piping. So that's why if you do the coloured stitch line, that will be helpful in the next step. So I just snipped off the excess piping, and that's that part done. We then move to installing the magnetic snap. Now we're going to install the magnetic snap on the lining side of the flap piece, so the underside. Make sure you've got the right piece. So it's this bit here that we're working with. Okay, so what you need for this step is you need obviously the lining side flap piece, you need the pattern piece, You need some Phrase Stop or similar. You need a magnetic snap, which has two parts to it. As you can see there, I'm using rainbow. It's a bit bright. 2 washers. An extra piece of interfacing. I'm using, it's a stiff interfacing, but it's not too thick. That's just to give some extra support, because you can imagine pulling constantly at magnetic snaps can be quite a weak spot for clutches and bags, so we want to reinforce it where we can. I've just got a piece of scrap leather. You could use cork or vinyl or another piece of interfacing if you don't have any of that on hand. You also need a seam ripper and some sort of marker. So gather your supplies and let's install a magnetic snap. First things first, take your flap pattern piece, and I've just punched a hole here where the magnetic snap will go to make this nice and easy, so there's no guessing the exact placement. There we go. You're then going to put a pen mark exactly where the mag snap will fit. Hopefully you can see that there. You then take one of the washers and sit the middle circle over the mark that you've just made, and then you're going to mark the 2 straight lines just there. On the back of the magnetic snap placement, I then like to go and iron a piece of interfacing directly behind where that magnetic snap is going to sit, again, as I said before, for reinforcement. The next step is to take your seam ripper and you're going to rip 2 little holes directly on the lines that you've just drawn with the washer. You don't want them too big, or your magnetic snap will move around. We don't want that. This can be a bit tricky. Some people prefer tiny scissors. I can never get them sharp enough to do this. So if you can see there, there's 2 little lines. I then grab the Phrase Stopper. I'm just going to zoom out, sorry. There we go. And put, might help if it's opened. Oops, okay. It dries clear, so don't worry if it goes a little over your marks. Then you're ready to put the magnetic snap in. As I said before, there are 2 parts to a magnetic snap. I prefer this one in the flap, but it really doesn't matter. So what you're going to do is you're going to insert the prongs through the holes that you've just made. Okay, so I've pushed the slits through. I've pushed the prongs through the slits, sorry. And I'm then going to add a piece of the leather or cork for support. Just cut 2 more little marks in there. Then you're going to grab one of the washers and put that over the top. Now, some people like to push the prongs out. I prefer to push them in. I know some people push one in and one out. I don't know if there's a particular reason for that, to be honest, but this is just the way that I do it. I would think if they're pushed out that it's going to rub on your fabric, so this is just the way that I choose to do it. So as you can see there, the prongs are folded over nice and firmly, and your magnetic snap is now installed. You might like to cover the back of the magnetic snap with another piece of interfacing or even a little piece of duct tape just to stop it rubbing through your fabric. You're now ready to finish your clutch flap piece off. So taking the panel that already has the piping and the panel that has the magnetic snap, and you're placing them right sides together like so. Line them up nice and neat. You can pin here to hold in place. you can really clearly see the purple stitch line, and that's why I suggest putting the bright coloured thread in the bobbin, because the next step is you're going to go to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch directly over the top of that stitch line again, or a little bit more towards the center, using a regular stitch length and taking your time to get it nice and neat. Okay, so I've stitched over the top of my purple line, or even just a little bit closer to the inside of the clutch, and then I've just gone around with pinking shears to clip the edges, clip off the excess. If you don't have pinking shears, you can just use scissors and clip the curves. I then use a chopstick or a turning tool, something with a nice edge, turn the flat piece the right way out. Like so, and then I just get my chopstick in there and just push out the curved edges all the way around like so. And what you can see is there's no gap. You can't see the piping stitch line, which is how it's meant to work with piping to get a nice finish, and that's the same on both sides. If I hadn't stitched close enough, I could just turn it the wrong way out again and go back in and do a stitch line again closer to the piping cord if needed. It's easy to fix, and it just takes practice working out what feet and what stitch length, etc. work for your machine. So don't be afraid to give piping a go. I think it gives a really nice finish. So what I will do next is go and give this an iron, and then I'm going to top stitch. Now for top stitching on my machine, I like to use a 3.5 stitch length, and I may do 1 or 2 stitch lines. We'll see. Just make sure that you aren't going too close to your magnetic snap, or you'll have a needle breakage. I'll be back to show you that in a second. Voila, here's one I prepared earlier. My top stitching is all done. Now I've done my top stitching about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. You can do whatever you choose, and just nice and neatly all the way around. Sometimes I like to do 2 rows of stitching. If you were to do any more than 2, you may need to move the magnetic snap placement, or you won't fit it in, but it just gives a different look again. That concludes video 1 of the Wanderer's Clutch sew along. I hope you enjoyed making the flat piece. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can be notified of the next video in this series. You may also like to join my Facebook group, Little Moo Designs Socialist, to check out what everyone else is sewing. Thanks so much for sewing along with me, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a great sewing day. Bye-bye.